Need a job? Want to make a career change? I'm hiring. Welcome to the Kerry Knoll Show. I'm your host, Kerry Knoll, and in today's episode, I'm going to talk about knowing when to hire help versus doing it all by yourself as a solo entrepreneur. Let's first talk about a couple things. I'm going to give you a quick little rundown of what we're going to chit-chat about here on this episode. When I knew I needed help with my t-shirt business, we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then we're going to talk about disadvantages of being a solo entrepreneur. Then we're going to talk about the advantages to being a solo entrepreneur. Then we're going to talk a little bit about best practices for hiring your help or hiring some help. And then we're going to start off and kick this thing off with this common phrase I'm sure most of you have heard in the past: stop working in your business and instead work on it. Of course, if you're a solo entrepreneur like myself and you've been doing it for yourself and by yourself for a very long time, it's awfully difficult to bite the bullet and decide when the right time is to actually hire some help. I am actually talking about this today on today's podcast because I've decided I need some help. I am no longer able to handle all the work within my business to be as successful as I would like my business to be, and therefore I'm in need of hiring at least one full-time employee, part-time to full-time employee, depending on what I can find and who it is and what they bring to the table. And this will help grow my business and allow me to scale it and do the things that I typically push off or don't get to on a daily basis. Through this episode, you'll get a little bit of some insight into how I'm thinking about this, why I'm thinking about this, why now is the right time. And I'm even going to talk a little bit about a past business I ran back in 2014, 2015 when I was selling t-shirts. Okay, so back in 2014, I started a t-shirt business online, and I was killing it selling basically print-on-demand shirts through teespring.com, and we were just using Facebook ads to drive the traffic to the campaigns, and then we were making the sales, and we were making way more sales than we were spending on ads, making it very, very profitable. Soon I decided that I was going to remove the middleman, Teespring, and I wanted to just go solely independent. So I found my own supplier for shirts at wholesale prices, and of course a company that would print my designs for me on basically heat transfers. This eliminated me having to go through the third party or the middleman Teespring, so I could pocket more margins off of each shirt sale I made versus having to share some of that with them. What happened was my shirt business exploded because I was able to scale it using my ability to create designs. So I designed all my shirts, increasing the amount of campaigns I was promoting and selling shirts, to the point where I knew I could no longer also be the only one who was pressing and bagging and tagging our shirts and sending them out. So this led me to the point where I was like, okay, in order for me to continue this business and not get so far behind on all the orders coming in on a regular basis, I now have to get some help. I needed to, I outgrew my own home because I was getting a truckload of boxes with shirts in it every single day. I mean, we would have 15 to 20 shirt boxes sometimes show up every single day, and I didn't have enough room in my house or my garage, and I had a 3-car garage at the time, for all the inventory I needed to house. My first order of business and first step for me was actually moving out of the house into a warehouse. I ended up getting a 3,000 square foot warehouse to print and ship the shirts from. But in order for me to utilize the 3,000 square foot warehouse, I also needed to get some employees, because I needed some employees to actually press the shirts and then bag and tag the shirts. So what I did was I ended up setting up 4 workstations within my warehouse, and then I had 2 employees per workstation, so I had 8 employees total working 6-hour shifts 2 times a day. So let me clarify that a little bit. So they'd work 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So I'd have 8 employees from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then I have a second shift of 8 employees working from 3 p.m. till 9 p.m. So we did 12-hour days, and each employee would work 6 hours shifts. Okay. And that's when I, needed that help, and I put an ad on Craigslist, and I got a ridiculous amount of responses because I really didn't have a way to vet them at the time. I was just basically putting up an ad. Hey, we're looking for warehouse help. The pay is, I think at the time it was $12 or $13 an hour, something along those lines. And I probably ended up with hundreds, maybe 1,000 applications. It was ridiculous. So I had to go through those and I just started, honestly picking out the ones from the subject line. If someone got a little bit creative or was doing something different, I looked at them and I just hired I think I ended up hiring like 30 employees. And I hired those first 30 almost on the spot, met them at the warehouse. If they seemed like they were decent folks, hired them. I didn't really even care what kind of background they had. I just needed help. And I needed help right away. And I, for the most part, got good help. I only had a couple people that ended up either quitting right away or it didn't work out for whatever reason, were not responsible enough to show up on time or show up for their shift, that sort of thing. Otherwise, it worked out really, really well. And then, of course, when I hopped out of the t-shirt business primarily in 2016 due to Facebook changing a lot of the ad algorithm showing t-shirts. To the degree we couldn't be as profitable as we were the previous 2 years, so therefore I shut the business down, and then I had, I learned a lot of things in that business. I learned what I needed to do. I got a lot of lessons on what I did wrong, of course, and hiring, which was interesting, and then I had to do some firing, which was even more interesting. And of course, along the way, it was quite the experience, and I even had to, get a payroll company and do a legit payroll, and it was just eye-opener for me. So let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about disadvantages of being a solopreneur. One of those disadvantages to being a solopreneur is you can't grow and scale your business efficiently by doing everything yourself because we have a limited amount of time. Everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. And so therefore, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of things I need to do outside of work, and I can't be working 24 hours a day. One of those really important things is I need sleep, and I try to get at least 7 hours of sleep each night. I wish I was getting 8. 7 I'll have to do for now. Sometimes it's as little as 5.5, 6 hours, but 7's the target number, and so there goes 7. That leaves me with like 17 hours. All right. Well, throughout the day, each day, at least 5 days a week, I like to work out for an hour to 2 hours. So that is going to bring me down to 15 hours. Then I need to have some family time. I have a wife and 2 kids, and I need to be there for them. So let's just say it takes a couple more hours out the day for sure. On top of that, I'm taking my son to practice, and I coach his basketball team. And now we're practicing 5 nights a week. 2 nights a week I need to be there. 3 nights a week I don't need to be there, but I still have to take him back and forth, so that takes time out of my day and evening. My daughter's in cheer. Luckily, my wife takes over that responsibility, so that one's not on my plate right now. But, as you can see, then there's just working on everyday stuff that I've got to do within my business. And then there's extra stuff that I'm not getting to because simply I don't have the time. So that's one of the huge disadvantages to being a solo entrepreneur. One of the other things is you easily get sidetracked with mundane and repetitive tasks. One of those tasks that can clog you up is customer support. Now, I take pride in customer support in my business, and I think a lot of my customers are very thankful that I am the one who actually offers my own customer support. I do not outsource this to some virtual assistant or anybody to do it for me, and therefore I get back to most people right away when they send me a message that they need some assistance. Usually I get back to them within just an hour or so, and if it goes longer than that, most of the times within a day. But typically I answer everything very, very quickly. So that's something that I should probably outsource or hand off to an employee. But since that's like one of my number one things, I probably won't do that until, of course, I've gained the trust of that employee and they know how important customer support is to me in my business. Another mundane repetitive task would be client prospecting. This is something I could easily hand off to an employee, and I plan on doing so as soon as that employee is on board. Okay. Another one could be sales, right? So if you have a business where you need to get sales or make sales, hiring salesman or salesperson would be advantageous for you, and this would be something that you probably can't handle doing on top of everything else you need to do in your business. For me, sales is important to my business, but most of my sales is done through sales pages, sales funnels, sales videos. Therefore, I don't necessarily need someone to be able to close any of our customers. Client prospecting and client sales are kind of similar. So it'd be helpful if somebody has some kind of background in sales and marketing to some extent. So when they're prospecting, they can actually help me close the sale too, and it's not just on me to do it. Another task that's mundane or repetitive could be repurposing content. So if you do a lot of content creation, you create a lot of YouTube videos, TikToks, blog posts, whatever it might be, taking that same exact content and then repurposing it for another social media network and getting it posted somewhere else is something that I'm definitely looking forward to having off my plate and letting someone else do. It's something that usually slips by me. I don't usually get it done, and you don't usually even do it because it's something that I just don't have time to do. Okay, so those are just a couple ideas about disadvantages of being a solo entrepreneur and having to do all the work yourself. Let's talk about the advantages of being a solo entrepreneur for a minute. One of those is you have no payroll or overhead. When you have a lot of payroll and overhead, that can be very stressful. It can be very hard to do sometimes, especially if sales aren't coming in or if something happens in the business overall, like it did with mine back in 2016, where we were no longer making sales and making profits. We had to, cut our payroll. Well, how do we do that? We have to fire the employee or employees, unfortunately, and then that's stressful to do. It's not fun to do. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants to put somebody out, especially when they rely on your paycheck and all that sort of thing. So then one of those advantages of doing everything yourself and not having any employees, you don't have to worry about paying anybody anything. No worrying about finding a good, dependable employee or employees. That's also another one. I briefly mentioned on that too. I was lucky enough, out of all the hundreds, if not thousands of applications I got for my t-shirt business, to just randomly pick the first 30 or so people, send them a message back, tell them when to show up to a quick little in-person interview so I could at least gauge their personality and their interest and if I felt they were going to be responsible or not. I mean, I had to guess, right? And, I guessed right, mostly. I only had maybe a couple people turn out to be not such good employees, which, I mean, I'm surprised, really, honestly. It worked out really, really well for me. But that can be a trick too, because when I worked for a digital marketing agency, the owner of that agency at the time was going through people every 2 weeks until he found the right person. He'd give people like a 2-week trial, and he'd hire them, and he'd waste his time and his money on them, and then find out they weren't able to perform at the level he needed them to perform at or wanted them to perform at, or he was just being a little bit over the top picky about it, perhaps. I don't know for sure. But at the end of the day, that is one of the negatives to being, a company where you need to actually hire and outsource some of the work, right? Or to get someone in-house to do the work for you. And so one of the advantages, again, of being a solo entrepreneur is not having to worry about finding that good, dependable employee or employees. You can do it all yourself. On that note, you are in full control of everything you do in your business when you're a solo entrepreneur, and that's one of those advantages. You know exactly how it's going to get done. You know exactly when it's going to get done. If it doesn't get done, you know exactly why it didn't get done. If it's not as good as you wanted it to be, you have no one to blame but yourself. That's one of the pluses to being a solo entrepreneur. But again, your time is limited. So you got to weigh these options. You got to decide whether or not it's right for you and when it's right for you. Let's move on to best practices for hiring help. So if you're creating a simple job application, use something like Google Forms, Jot Forms, or Typeforms, just to name a few. I prefer Typeform. I love the way it works. I love how it's set up. I'm already a member, paying member of their platform, and I use it for lots of things like surveys and such for my own customers. And I just created a simple job application today, in fact. Before I shot this, I'm shooting this particular podcast video for you, where I'm just asking simple questions like first name, last name, email, phone number. Then I'm asking them if they're currently working, if they're looking to keep their current job and just add working for me as a secondary job to supplement their income, or are they looking for a career or job change in general? Are they gonna, if they are currently working, are they willing to quit their other job to work for me? And if they're not, what is exactly that they want to do? And then I ask them a little bit about their history, like, do they have any sales and marketing experience? Do they have any experience with certain softwares or skills? So I ask about whether or not, for what I'm looking for, I'm asking them if they have any WordPress experience, if they have any ClickFunnels experience, any active campaign experience, any experience with Zoom, any experience with Photoshop or Illustrator, or any experience with paid advertising with YouTube ads or Google ads or Facebook ads, and then leaving it up to them to fill in the blanks with that. And that gives me a little idea of their overall experiences and what they know and what they do not know. But I really don't care where they work currently. I don't really care what they're, what they've been doing. I really don't care about their education. It's not important to me. All it really matters is what do they know now, because when this day and age with digital marketing, everything changes in a heartbeat, and because it changes so quickly, it just doesn't make any difference what their background is, what kind of education they really have. It's really about, are they comfortable doing this, working with the software and or these types of skills? Do they have any of these skills? Have they worked with any of this type of software? If not, I think get a better idea of whether or not I need to train them to be able to use these things or not. That helps quickly and easily vet possible hires and eliminates the truly unqualified folks that I don't want to really even pursue at all. And then I just ask them one more open-ended question about, is there any other comments or anything that you want to share about yourself? And that's it. That's as simple as it is. And like I said, I'm using Typeform for that, and I'm sending them directly to that to vet them a little bit. Okay. Another best practice for hiring help that I would like to share is you should create easy to follow video tutorials showing the employee exactly how to do each task. And the keyword there is each task. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to lump a bunch of tasks together into any type of training, because you want to keep it short and simple and short and sweet for them to consume, because it's short. They'll retain the information better and comprehend it better, and then they'll be able to apply it and do it very, very quickly versus having to sift through a bunch of information and then try to remember exactly how to do something. So create very short video tutorials for every single task you want an employee to do. If they forget or they're not sure, they can quickly find the exact video they need to look at and then rewatch it. And it will be short, so it won't waste a lot of their time or yours. And it'll lessen the confusion. It'll reduce the overwhelm overall, and it should remove any or all questions. Now, if that task has a lot of unanswered questions because you're noticing that the employee has questions, then you probably didn't do a good enough job of keeping it super simple in the video and explaining in complete detail exactly what you needed them to do. So make sure that you do that. And then also what's good about that is you get good feedback. So you can take those questions that they still have and you can reshoot that video tutorial for that particular task and make sure that those questions are answered in that next video tutorial that you make. So whether or not that's for that particular employee, which would be helpful for them if they have to review it, and or if you decide to hire another employee or you need to replace that employee. I hope you've understood the value there and your most bang for your buck out of your employee, whatever you're paying them per hour, to get the work done you need to get done. So just make sure that before you decide to hire someone, my advice is to create a complete, comprehensive list of all the tasks you want that employee to be able to perform. Then go ahead and use a screen recording software like I'm using right now for this particular podcast. I use Screencast-O-Matic. I think it's less than like 20 bucks a year to have a license for it. And then what you'll do is you'll screen record the task at hand that you want them to do. And you'll do that for every single task you have on your list. Then you'll go ahead and hire somebody. You put your application out, you find somebody that is qualified to do the job you need them to do, and you'll say, watch this first video tutorial, and then they will watch one video at a time and do the task. And as they keep progressing, you'll keep sharing, or they'll keep going through each and every video tutorial to be able to do each task that you need them to do. And therefore, there won't be any question about what they're doing, how they're doing it. It'll be done in the exact same manner that you would do it as if you were doing it yourself. So hopefully that's helpful. I've been talking about hiring an employee now and knowing when to hire help. And so I know this is getting a little long-winded, and I want to make sure that I don't keep you on here too long. So I'm going to end this podcast. And so please, if you like what you are hearing and what you're getting out of this, I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to whatever podcast that you prefer, whether that's Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, whatever it might be, wherever you're finding this. Please hit the subscribe. I'd love for you to leave me a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and click the bell notification to get notified each and every week when I put out a brand new podcast or any videos on YouTube. Please leave a comment below if you're watching this on YouTube as well. And I will see you next week. Thanks so much for watching the Kerry Knoll Show. I'm your host, Kerry Knoll, and I will speak with you real soon. Take care.